I think what we should do is save our stories of embarrassment and times where we wish a cop had pulled us over so we could have them talk to our boss. And let's just go through the video. I'm adding Bill. Bill Doris also was in TV news, and he's the one who sent me the link. Hey, Bill.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
I wasn't sure if Joanna was going to make it, so I had to back up.
I'm here.
Okay, so since we have three of us here, you could give like the peace symbol or something if you want to talk during the video. I'm just going to play it and stop it at points I think are interesting, but you guys may want me to stop it also for other places. So just tell me, just like wave your hands or something. Are we ready?
Yeah, ready.
Okay, and I should just preface this by saying this is the video that Law and Crime posted, the raw body cam footage of the cop talking to the NBC producer who was tailing the Rittenhouse Juror vehicle. So let's watch.
So you got iPads. Are you from Wisconsin, sir?
No.
Huh?
No.
Where you from?
Atlanta.
Atlanta? Okay. All right.
I mean, Dunwoody's my official, but I flew up from Atlanta.
You flew up. What's significance of you being here?
I work for NBC.
For NBC?
Yeah.
Okay. You're a reporter?
Producer.
Producer? Okay. All right. Yeah.
Why was he calling me?
I don't know. So were you following a vehicle?
I was trying to see. I was being called by New York going, maybe these are the people you need to follow, but I don't know. I was trying to.
You trying to what?
Just do what they told me to do.
I had to stop it there. He was just trying to do what they told him to do. Okay, raise your hand if you have ever been told to do something like this. Bill, you were never told to follow anyone?
No, I was never told to follow anybody.
Or find someone?
Well, I mean, come on. In television news, we were all told to go find somebody. But as far as follow someone, I've never been told to follow anybody, but I have followed somebody before.
I would say I have never been told to follow jurors, but I have been told to find people that would be similar to situations where you're like trying to see where their location is, like where they might be in order to get an interview. Is that kind of what you're saying, Joanna, that you've had to do?
Yeah, I would agree with Bill. I mean, I guess I was never explicitly told to like follow a juror to their house, but I can remember a time even like in a previous television market in Southwest Missouri where I was told to whatever I had to do, get an interview with someone who it was a large company that had just laid off a bunch of machinists at the time. It was during the economic downturn. And I was told to do whatever I needed to do to get at least one interview. And I followed a worker all the way to their house until they got to their cul-de-sac. And then I had to get out of the car shamefully and explain to them why I had followed them for 15 minutes all the way to their house. So I suppose instruction to get behind their vehicle and follow them in that case, but I was told don't come back without an interview.
What did the machinist say?
You know what? They were surprisingly gracious because they certainly didn't have to be. I was now standing outside their house. I didn't have like a camera rolling or anything, but I was with a photographer. And they said, I'm really sorry. I can't talk to you. And I was so embarrassed. I just said, I really apologize. I really apologize. It was so inappropriate, you know? Mm-hmm. So I would say that is not out of the norm.
Oh, it's definitely following people of high importance is definitely not important, not rare, especially at the national level. When I was a booking producer for Fox News Channel, just like the person you're about to hear on the phone, when he basically calls his boss and is like, she's the one who told me to do it. It was very common. I have friends who still work in this business and they go travel to high profile events and their whole job is to get people before the other stations get them. That's the whole reason they're there. And so I bet this is not uncommon to try to find jurors and figure out what vehicle they're in and just locate the hotel or wherever they might be staying, because what you're trying to do is when it's over, you want to be waiting outside trying to grab them. I think that's probably what is going on here. That would be my guess. Bill, what do you think they were after?
I think they were I agree with you, but that doesn't change the fact that this is so unethical and borderline against the law.
Well, that was what I was wondering. Like, what is the law about following someone? Is there a law again? I mean, let's just say it's not the Rittenhouse jurors. Is maybe somebody in the chat can let me know? Is there a law that says you can't follow someone? I'm guessing probably. I know they broke I think they ran a red light, so they broke that law. But I don't.
Right, but I don't think you're allowed to follow jurors. I think they're supposed to be sequestered for a reason, especially from the media. So whether I don't know specifically if Wisconsin has a law against it or not, but it's such an unethical practice to do this. Now, when I chased down somebody back in 2010, the quarterback for the Kentucky Wildcats football team, Mike Hartline, was busted for public intoxication and assaulting a woman, and he tried to run out of the Fayette County Jail like we weren't going to chase him down to get the video of him. But if he would have ran from the Auburn linebackers like he ran from us, they would have won that game. But I mean, still, that's not illegal. Chasing jurors, it seems like it would be illegal. I don't know if it is, but it would seem like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is not necessarily. Well, actually, you know what? I don't know. I don't know if the judge barred MSNBC from the courtroom.
He did.
As an ethical violation, or there was some kind of legal foundation there. But let's keep watching because it gets interesting.
New York told you to follow a vehicle?
Yes.
Your offices in New York or what?
That's right.
How did they know about this vehicle?
I mean, it was discreet. I wasn't like, talk to anybody. Just trying to find a location. That's all. So, he's been told to follow out.
He was told to follow somebody. He's told to follow this vehicle from his offices in New York.
What office in New York?
It's the NBC office in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the person who called you and told you to do this?
Yeah.
You want to give me his information real quick?
You want me to call?
Sure.
So we got news media telling them to follow unmarked vehicles.
That's what it sounds like.
Hey, law enforcement wants to talk to you.
Hi, this is Officer Jones, Kenosha Police. We're trying to figure out what's going on here, why you have a reporter or a producer following vehicles out here. Hold on, I will put you on speakerphone because you're connected to his car. Now, can you go again?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Hi, officer. My name is Irene. I'm a booking producer with NBC News.
Uh-huh.
I just wanted to explain real fast what a booking producer is. I know I sort of talked about it earlier, but when you are a booking producer, it may seem obvious, but your entire job is booking people. So you have producers who are producing the show who might be looking bird's eye view at this segment and that segment and how the whole show is going to go together. And you have the booking producers usually work specifically for a show. But in a case like this, maybe you have a few of them that are just working for the whole network. And all they're doing is just trying to book guests. So it's obvious that this entire pursuit, if that's what we're going to call it, is about eventually booking a guest, like getting somebody on air. And so I think it would be easy to put two and two together that, again, they're following the Rittenhouse juror vehicle because they want to get a juror on television. And it may not have been that they were going to try to interview them that night. But again, like we were saying earlier, they're trying to get a lead on where these people are going to be so that they can be staked out and try to get the first interviews as soon as they're available. That's my read on it. Any other comments?
Yeah, actually, I just found this, Allison, and I sent you the link. According to wisconsincourts.gov, This is on their website. Juror privacy. Most information about jurors is kept confidential. Effective January 1st, 2009. Wisconsin Statute 75-6.04 requires that information on juror qualification, questionnaires, and supplemental questions asked by the court shall be kept confidential and released on the order of the court only on showing of good cause. Other than the names of jurors and city of residence, additional personal information collected from the juror qualification questionnaire is used on other court documents and is not accessible to the public. So to me, that sounds like everything about these jurors is supposed to be kept confidential. Now,
I mean, I don't think following them means that they're going to expose their identity or anything, because, like regularly covering court cases, Washington and Missouri and, North Dakota, other places where I lived, we'd be in there with the jury all the time. So we knew who they were. You're just barred from showing them on TV or camera or releasing their names or anything. But not to say that I ethically think that what happened here was okay, because I don't. But I think there's that line there that we do know their identity, but we're expected not to reveal it.
Yeah. And like I said, I think it would have been so that as soon as it's over, then they would. However, that said, I think the concern from the trial standpoint was that it would affect the jurors and their decision making, because they would feel intimidated and more vulnerable and concerned that their identity is going to be released, and then that could affect their lives forever depending on the verdict, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, when I covered trials, you were barred from having any direct interaction with the juror. I mean, it was that strict. It's so serious. Yeah.
Okay. I want to go back to the video, but Bill, in the meantime, can you tell me a story about, can you tell another story about having to find someone so I can get this video loaded for us? Or Joanna, do you have another one?
Oh, go ahead, Joanna.
Well, I mean, I think I did, mostly general news. And so I think in general news, when you're talking about like news of the day, story of the day, you have to find someone every day. Like, I mean, I knocked on countless doors. I couldn't even tell you. I mean, it was a daily occurrence where you're showing up at someone's house, and I would say, 95% of the time they would like you not to be on their doorstep. It's kind of the expectation, I think, in local news. And so, I mean, you are regularly invading people's privacy. And if you call them on the phone and they say they don't want to talk to you, you still go to their house. You try that too. You exhaust every means possible to find somebody, and you're told no through multiple times at multiple places. And that's the expectation.
Didn't you tell me once that you just called in and you were like, they just said they didn't want to talk, but you never actually knocked on their door?
Yeah. I may not have done that more than once, because it's humiliating, right? It's humiliating. You can only have so many doors slammed in your face, or like so many phones hung up on you, before you're like, it is so obvious this person doesn't want to talk to me, and I'm just not comfortable harassing them to the point that, I don't have any pride left. And I understand like the fear, right? It's the fear that one of the other three stations will harass them just a little bit longer than I did. And they'll say yes. They'll be broken down to the point where they just can't say no anymore. And I got to be the reporter standing there when they decide to do that.
Right.
But that's not me. Mm-hmm. That was one of the hardest things, and the things I like the very least about working in news.
Oh, yeah. My absolute 100% least favorite was chasing down people in terrible circumstances. I absolutely hated it. The one thing that I think got me through it was there were many circumstances where you would knock on the door, and, if you didn't act like a total jerk and you just offered them the chance to tell their story, there were definitely circumstances where people would tell me afterwards that they were really glad that they shared and like got it off their chest and had the chance to tell people what was really going on, especially in cases where there's just a lot of already there was a lot of coverage leading up to it. Maybe they felt like people were getting it wrong, or they wanted to say it was somebody was killed They wanted to be able to talk about that person. They just felt better afterwards. But, you know, it was tough. It was tough in the circumstances where, you know, you're really just like, you know, the ones where you do the knock and they don't want to talk to you. And then even though you don't pressure them, you walk away, it still feels just crappy to have been the person who showed up at the door. And then, you know, anyway, I want to talk in a second about the pressure that this guy's under to do what he's doing, and how that kind of pressure in TV news can turn people into just monster robots who forget about the fact that they live in the real world with people who have real feelings and real lives and real families. But let's keep watching for a little bit.
We were just trying to respectfully, just trying to see if it's
respectfully,
if it's possible to find any leads about the case. And so we were just keeping our distance, just to see like where people involved in the trial are positioned.
Did you hear that? We're just trying to see where people in the trial are positioned. That's exactly what they were doing.
Respectfully.
Respectfully.
I'm going to respectfully run this red light, but
but yeah, so that's totally what they were about. They were just trying to find out where they were staying so they could be outside waiting to just ambush them the second that they come out, I guess, with their suitcases or something like that.
Well, I was going to say, part of me thinks that, you know, maybe they were trying to like get an in with the jurors, right? Like talk to them, even if they're not supposed to be talking to them, talk to them, not about the case or anything, but kind of quote unquote, make a friend. So then when the trial was over, they go, oh, yeah, it's Joanna. I've been talking to her occasionally. So if I am going to do an interview, I'll do it with her.
Right.
I mean, it's certainly the right way to do it, but maybe that was some of the thinking there too.
Yeah, no, actually, that's a really good point. There was a murder trial that I covered, and the attorney ahead of time asked if I wanted to meet with the guy who was charged and meet with him in jail. And then if he liked me enough, you know, thought I was a good enough reporter, then if he was acquitted, he would give me the first interview. So I remember that was even something like where I wasn't like stalking the guy. Obviously, I was invited to go meet the guy and talk with him and see if, you know, he wanted to give us his story first. So you're, I think, always trying to make contact with people ahead of time if you can.
Yeah.
In a case like, you know, I'm sure there were lots of people contacting Kyle Rittenhouse, you know, to see if they could get him ahead of time before all this was over. You know, the problem, I think, again, going back to the jurors, that makes it unique is that it puts them in a position where it implicates their decision making, and I think that's where the ethics of all of this go awry. Bill, anything else?
I think it's important to notice, and I didn't catch this the first time, but I'm catching it now as we're watching it back. They blot out the producer. They blot out his face, but they show the name of the producer on the phone call on the iPhone. Pay attention to this.
Okay, but hang on. I have to say, Jason Vanderkoy, who I have interviewed before, Allison came to my door, but I was a boring interview.
Oh my God, do you remember it?
I know Jason. He's a farmer. I've interviewed him a million times, and you're not boring, Jason. All right, but thank you for not recording me on your body cam. Here we go.
No means were we trying to get in contact with any of the jury members or whoever's in the car. We just were trying to see like where key players in the trial may be.
So Joanna, she rebukes your guess. She's saying they're not trying to get in contact with them. They're just trying to see where they're positioned, which is such a TV booker way of saying we just want to know where they are, so that, because that's what they always tell each other. We're going to position you. You're positioned here. Where are you positioned? But, you know, it's like total Secret Service way of talking about things.
Irene Ryan.
Let's keep watching.
Yeah.
So
If you want, I can just offer this. Once the verdict comes, like these are the letters that the clerk is going to be giving to them. So this is,
Hold on a second.
just trying to.
We have hard ID on the individual. Apparently, he's a producer with NBC. Currently on the phone with his offices in New York, who advised him to follow a vehicle in reference to the case.
Why block out his face but not her name?
That might have been an oversight. I work for a police
Therefore,
department. I have video.
That's a hell of an oversight.
I mean, it's not good, but I
Wait.
definitely
Say that again, Joanna.
I said it could have just been an oversight. Like I said, I work for a police department now, and I have to blur a lot of video, and I've made egregious errors. But I'm not defending that. It could be an oversight, not intentional.
Right.
I didn't notice it the first time I watched it.
Oh, her name. Yeah. Because I guess she became very popular after this.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it wasn't an oversight, but yeah. I mean, if they're going to blur her name.
Well, I don't know. There are rules about what is redacted and what's not, aren't there, Joanna? I mean, you can't just redact anything.
Yeah, but I mean, no crime was committed here. And I mean, I would have redacted it if I were putting that video together. So.
But Joanna, let me ask you this. It could have been an error, but let's say it wasn't an error. Why would they have redacted his identity, but not the call?
Yeah, I mean, they shouldn't have. If they were going to leave up her name, then they may as well have shown his face.
Right.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. You're totally right.
Okay.
651 and 494. You said it was a red light violation. Ten four. Okay. All right. So, real quick, how you advised him to follow like any vehicle? Did you know which vehicle he was following? I mean,
We just had our people positioned in different areas of the courthouse to see if anyone would be able to in different areas, and so we were just following different.
She sounds drunk, you guys. She's so nervous. She sounds freaking drunk.
At this point, she knows she is busted. She knows she knows that she went all in with two pair and is getting hammered by a full house. Okay. She knows at this point, like, I wish I could play in this chick's poker game weekly, because she knows at this point she is screwed, and she's trying to watch everything she's saying, but she's also trying to not give the cop too much information. And that's something else I'm curious about. Why didn't she question the validity of who she was speaking with on the other end of the call?
Yeah, that was a little strange. I don't know. Maybe she just had blind faith in the other producer that he wouldn't be putting her on the phone with somebody who wasn't, like, I don't know, legit law enforcement. But yeah, I would have been like, who is this?
Right.
Wait,
exactly.
Journalists who don't ask questions, think critically, and just have blind faith? I don't believe it. I don't think that happens in history. Are you serious? Come on. We got this super chat, or they passed the jury info to the protesters. I don't think so. I think, again, this was all about stalking people to find out where they're going to be, to try to ambush them when the time comes. That's my real it.
I'm not going down the Alex Jones conspiracy theory road. I don't think that was it at all.
What do you think it was?
I
not
think
a conspiracy. That's what they do.
What, the media passing information to Antifa?
Oh, that one. Yeah, no, that's not what they do. Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I thought you meant the ambush thing.
No. Oh, the ambush. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I don't think they were going to pass.
But I don't think NBC is selling trade secrets to Antifa or whoever.
No.
They're that vindictive. I think that it's just, they just want it first.
Mm-hmm.
They just want
it first.
They want they're staying at, what room they're going to be walking out of. So the moment that they are able to talk, that reporter standing right there at that door, and that's the first reporter they see.
Yep. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what the assignment desk is all about. Is trying to figure out what vehicles or what person is where, and then you're calling your
Do the actual confrontation. Oh,
what'd
that
you
was
say?
the worst. They're never the ones that, right? They get figure out all the information, and then you're the one confrontation.
Right.
Yeah, I remember. Oh God, this was terrible. One time, this guy killed his wife, shot her in the head, and called it a mercy killing because she had cancer, and they wanted me to go interview his son, and I was by myself. I didn't even have a photographer that day, so I was totally by myself. And I go knock on the door, and the guy goes, I introduce myself. I'm with ABC Action News, and he's like, "Why? Well, what's going on?" And I had just gone through training where I had learned that if you tell somebody something really terrible and they do something because of that information, you can be held liable in some way. So I didn't want to tell him why I was there until I knew he knew why I was there. So I asked him if he knew what happened with his dad that day, and he said no. And so I didn't know what to do. So I said, well, you should call the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. And he started screaming at me, what is going on? What is going on? And so I felt very unsafe. So I just told him that his dad had killed his wife, who I didn't know if it was his mom. I just said, I think your dad shot your mom. I mean, can you imagine being that person? And I'm like all by myself. And then they still want me to ask the guy for an interview. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's just the job. I got to tell you, one of my favorite things about switching to environmental reporting was that I never had to do that kind of stuff ever again. I never had to go knock on doors and ask people if they wanted to go on camera after events like that. Okay, let's continue.
We're going to ask you guys to not do that. All right, that's a concern here. This is huge. We can't afford anything crazy happening, putting people in dangerous positions. This individual violated some traffic laws here doing this. So we're going to ask you guys to refrain from doing that.
Got it. Understood. Thank you so much. We're very sorry. We're very sorry.
I'm very sorry.
Go ahead, 494. Do you have any ties to this community, sir?
I love this community. I've covered a lot of golf, listening straight. Not the Kenosha community itself. No, sir.
Negative. He do not have any ties here. He's from out of state.
I need friends.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right.
I apologize.
Irene, what's your position?
Booking producer.
Booking producer.
Do you think they're really sorry?
Not in the. They're sorry they got caught.
Exactly. Yeah. I
And
agree.
the cop, oh my God. When you click play, the cop, we're going to ask you to not do that. It just sounds like Allison telling her producer, hey, I'm going to ask you to not do that.
I thought it was
he was
funny
like
how
he was
he's
talking
like,
to a kid.
I thought it was funny how he's like, do you have any connections? And the guy's like, oh yeah, I mean, I've been covered. I have golf friends, and then the cop just goes, negative, no connections, not from here. And the guy was like trying to act like he loves the community.
In the beginning of the video, the guy said he was from Atlanta. The producer's from New York. How is he going to sit there? Oh, I've been to Kenosha all these times. I mean, I'm not saying he's lying, but why did you tell the guy you're from Atlanta then?
He's like, yeah, I've stalked a lot of people here. I have a lot of connections here. I've done a lot of stalking. Okay, let's continue. We're almost done.
Okay.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our law and crime
I guess that was
followers
it.
on YouTube.
Anyway, now everybody can go to Law and Crime and watch it. All right, so let's talk about the pressure that guy was under. Do you, either of you, have any stories about, because I could start while you're thinking about it, about dropping a story that was expected of you and what your bosses said if you didn't get either the interview or get the story that you were sent out to. I'll tell my first one. And this set the tone for the rest of my career. I was working in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is a pretty small market actually. And I don't even remember what story I was on. I just know that I was told to drive an hour away for the story. And the person canceled on me when I was about 45 minutes away from the station. So I was almost there. The person canceled, and it was probably, I don't know, maybe noon. And I called my boss and said, "Hey, I'm not going to get the interview because the person canceled." And he goes, "Well, then don't come back to the station until you have an interview." And I'm like, "But I don't have a story." And he's like, "Then I guess you better find one." So I remember pulling off like the next exit, and I just went to the downtown area. It was just a tiny, small Tennessee town. And I knocked on every door, like every door, every business door. And I said, "Hi, I'm Allison Morrow with WBIR. I have to have a lead story at 5 o'clock. Do you have a story that I could run at 5 o'clock?" And so like by the sixth door, it was some program for youth offenders, and they were going to do some new thing to get him out of jail. And the judge, I guess it was his idea. And so I was like, "Okay, that's an interesting story. Is the judge available to talk?" He gets out of court at 2. I'll just sit here until 2. Judge got put the mic on him. "Just tell me about the program. Why does it matter?" "Great. How do you feel?" "Awesome. I'm out of here." Drive the tape back to the station, get it on, lead at 5. I have no idea to this day. Was it really a good program? Should we have been doing it? Who was funding it? And you think back to the amount of days that, you put news on television that you really didn't vet because of that kind of circumstance where your boss is like, "Well, you're fired if you come back here without a lead story." And you're like, oh crap. Well, I better get a lead story or I have no job. And that's kind of the pressure that people are under. So eventually you have to get to the point where you go, "I don't care." But when I was in my late 20s and nervous about my career, I was, not aware of the, the fact that I needed to just go, "That's ridiculous pressure to put on a journalist. You're going to force me to put something in the news that I'm not really sure I'm going to have time to vet. Why would you tell me to do that?" But I didn't have the balls to say that to my boss. Would anybody else like to share?
Well, I can't share one specific story, but I can tell you that like working in a bureau, that was kind of my life every day, right? Because after I had called all 25 of the contacts that I'd made and begged them to help me come up with an enterprise story that no one else was doing that day, that wasn't news of the day, because I was required to come up with, like 3 viable story options every day. There were times I just sat in my car and cried and just like a couple of hours until one of them finally called me back and told me some minuscule like piece of information that probably shouldn't have been on the news. And I was just so desperate. I just made it work. I worked in news for 15 years and I worked in the Seattle television market for 6. And it's a large market. And I was still expected to come up with 3 original story ideas every single day for 15 years. And so I do remember one time that I ended up one time in 15 years that I wasn't able to turn a story and provide a live shot like at 5 o'clock. Like I just everything I tried that day had fallen through. And so there happened to be like a house fire. And it was a non-news house fire, right? Nothing all that traumatic had occurred. Like the house was probably somewhat of a loss, but no one was injured. Everybody got out okay. It was like your very run-of-the-mill house fire. And they said, "Do a live shot." And I said, "No, not doing it." I said, "I'm embarrassed to be here." So I stood, 100 feet away and I got I shot for myself too. I was a multimedia journalist. So I did my own shooting and editing. Stood about 100 feet away. I got a couple of shots. I fed it back to the station. And I said, "Sorry, that's it." One time in my whole career. But I wouldn't do it. I'm like, I'm not going to make it more than it is. Just this once. So I can walk away with a little bit of dignity. But yeah, the pressure is immense.
Mm-hmm.
the pressure can be completely immense, and I'm going to go on the other side of Joanna when it comes to house fires with my story, and I'll try to give it as quickly as I possibly can. I was working at the Lexington ABC affiliate, and Frankfort, Kentucky is the capital, but it's dead center, almost dead center between Louisville and Lexington. There was a McDonald's that caught fire in Frankfort. Now, keep in mind, during this time, the Frankfort was in Louisville's DMA, not in Lexington. It bounces back and forth depending on the year. Anyway, during this particular time, it was in the Louisville DMA. So me and the other two stations were setting up live shots and getting ready for the morning show. And all of a sudden, I get a strange phone call from my ex-wife, who I hadn't spoken to in years, but she's in the business as well. She was actually the morning show producer for the NBC affiliate in Louisville. She said, "Hey, are you covering the house fire where the people were killed in Lexington?" I said, "What the hell are you talking about?" So she tells me, yeah, we're getting reports that, 3 people have been killed in a house fire. I said, "Oh my God." So I tell my reporter, I'm a photog at the time, and I tell my reporter, "Hey, we got to go. This is a McDonald's burning down, and we've got video, but the big story, which the other two stations, they didn't know about at the time, this is the big story." So I tear it down. My producer calls and says, "Hey, where are y'all going?" And I said, "Look, I got a report of this. Can you get it confirmed?" She gets it confirmed. We get back on the road. It's about a 30-minute drive from Frankfort to Lexington. About 10 minutes into this drive, the news director calls me. Keep in mind, a news director up at 4:45 in the morning, who the F has ever heard of that, calls me and says, "Why are you leaving the live shot? This is a McDonald's fire. This is 3 people killed in a house fire." It just seems common sense, right? "No, that McDonald's is a landmark in Frankfort, and you go back and you do your live shot there."
Oh my God.
I told him and I will bury him every chance I get. He should have never been in the business. Call me crazy, call me spiteful, call me having a grudge. Doug Hogan should have never been in the news business to begin with. But he wanted me to stay at the McDonald's fire versus 3 people dying in a house fire. I said, "You know what, Doug? We're going to go to this other story, and if you want to fire me, go right ahead. But if you're going to fire me now, let me know, because I'm pulling this live truck over and I'll get out and walk home." So the fact that he would try to put pressure on us to cover there's no comparison, or am I wrong?
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, the way that I think the decision makers, when they're pushing in that direction, are thinking is the visuals, and that more people will care about the McDonald's burning down, sadly, than a couple people they don't know, even though the couple people I don't know is like actually people who died versus no fatalities in McDonald's. I just think he's probably thinking more people will watch the McDonald's because more people are connected to the McDonald's, and screw the people who died in the other building. When you say, Joanna, that was probably the thought process?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've probably addressed it a lot on your various channels. That's just the concept of like, what time is it airing, and what's our demographic, and where do the majority of the people live within our,
Right.
I work north sound of Seattle. So it's like, do the people in Seattle care about this story that's happening up in the area that Joanna's covering? That was like a constant battle, right? It's like, they want the story that appeals to the majority of the viewers. And sometimes it's not the story that like is maybe the most important thing happening that day, unfortunately.
Well, you know what? I used to be connected to a McDonald's too, and that's why I had to have gastric sleeve surgery. But that's why my thought process was, okay, Frankfort is not even in our DMA anymore, and Lexington is where we're at. We're on Man of War Boulevard in Lexington. Why would we not want to cover a house fire that's killed 3 people in Lexington versus a McDonald's that's not even in our DMA? So that's why I forced that issue. But it was trying to put pressure on reporters is nothing new, but it's something that whenever I thought journalism was still real, that I would try to instill in the younger generation or the up and comers. Sometimes you got to take the story into your own hands and, make better or make decisions for yourself. And then sometimes it's easier to ask for forgiveness and permission. But nowadays, and like with this example right here, ethics has just went out the window.
Dang, I never knew this was a thing. Must be even worse now. I think it is worse now.
It's 100 times worse.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just because the margin is so thin on who's winning, who has the market share of the audience, and add the internet to that, and the budgets that are going down the drain, even though I don't really quite understand that, because it always seemed like the CEOs of the companies were doing quite well, but they were always complaining about money. And so, yeah, I mean, the ratings battle has gotten ruthless at this point. Bill wants to know, Allison, the three of you that have children, what would you say to your children if they want to major in journalism?
Oh, let's go around the table for this one.
Joanna and I both have producers who are sleeping right now that are the same age. Joanna, would you like to go first? What would you say if Holly asked you, hey, Mom, should I go into journalism?
I said I want to be a journalist when I was 10 years old, and that was almost 30 years ago. And my parents were telling me then that I probably shouldn't do it. So, but they were more concerned that I would never make any money. And
that was my parents' concern too.
And that because I remember, like, I went to the University of Colorado and I graduated. I'm just aged myself or whatever, but I graduated in 2005. And at that time they were saying I remember the statistics so clearly, only 36% of you will ever get a job in journalism. Like, it's that different, right? So I spent like my whole senior year crying and sending out resume tapes, like actual physical VHS tapes at the time.
I feel like crying is a pattern for you in your career.
Let's not talk about how we met, which involved crying.
Yeah. We'll save that for another live stream.
But no, my point is this though, like, my parents really didn't want me to go into journalism. But, they let me, because what are you going to do? I'm very independent minded. My daughter, I mean, I hope she doesn't choose that career, but you got to support them, right? Like, you got to let them do it. And so I would certainly try to steer her away from it.
No.
But I mean, she's really young. Who knows what journalism will be by the time she gets to the point where who knows if there will even be college? I say that all the time. Am I doing the right thing creating a college fund for her? But I would never discourage like my child from being who they want to be. But at the same time, I really hope it's not a career path they choose.
Bill?
I have a 25-year-old son and I have 2 grandchildren. And if any of them were to try to go into journalism, I would do everything I could to fight it. I would beg, plead, cajole, bribe. I would do everything I could. Now, would I support them if once they got out of college and they had a degree? I would do everything I could to impart wisdom, share experiences. I'd try to do everything I could. I would actually try to instill into them, don't do journalism, go into meteorology, and then move to the southeastern United States. Because apparently for some reason here in the southeast, instead of just, oh, it's going to rain today. No, they still rely on the local weatherman. So I would tell them to go into journalism, or if you're going to go into journalism, go be a meteorologist and move to the southeast. But I would discourage it the way I would probably discourage if I had a daughter from doing an OnlyFans.
That's journalism, Bill.
My bad.
OnlyFans.
What was I thinking?
I'm just kidding. Depends on how you do it. Bill and I always argue about what is really journalism. Anyway, I mean, I think I would just try to open my daughter's eyes to what journalism can be in all of its different forms, and allow her the opportunity to see that there's a whole world out there and different ways to do journalism that are not corporate TV news jobs. And I think my greatest sadness for some of my peers who are still in the business is that they feel so inextricably linked identity-wise with the brand and the traditional newsroom that they get beat up like an abused partner day in and day out, and don't leave because they don't see that you can have an identity as a journalist outside of a corporate newsroom. And so I think for me, that would be my number one priority, would be to say, okay, if you really like this, let's talk about what is it that you like about it. Do you like talking to people? Do you like asking questions? Do you like digging into facts? Do you like exposing things? What are the things that you think you like about the career? Like, let's talk about that, because nobody ever did that with me. And when I first got in it, I had totally incorrect and inaccurate presumptions about what being a producer at Fox News Channel was. I thought I wanted to be a national news producer. And if somebody had said, but what do you really mean by that? What does that even mean? I wouldn't have been able to tell you. I literally just, I don't know. I just thought that's what you did. So, and then I got there, I was there for a year. I hated it. I left. And now I can articulate very well what I wanted out of the career that I didn't understand at the time. And then I found a better fit. That said, eventually that didn't work anymore either for who I was. And that's why I left. And I figured out a new way to invent, the idea of journalism and media analysis and commentary and all that stuff as an independent person. But I think too many folks who go to school for journalism especially are sort of indoctrinated and corralled into thinking there's one way to do it nowadays.
Yeah. Let me ask you both a question going back to this piece of video. Actually, two questions. I'll ask the first one. What was NBC going to do if this guy successfully followed the jurors? To me, I mean, yeah, they could hit up the jurors as soon as they talk or whatever. But to me, it also just seems like that's a Wile E. Coyote finally catches the Roadrunner moment. Okay, I've got him. Now what? Because you can't go into the hotel and talk to him. I mean, were they just going to stake him out like cops or the FBI at the hotel? I mean, I'm still confused as to what the end goal was going to be there.
Yeah, I think they were just trying to get a location on them. I mean, she even said that. We're trying to see where people in the trial are positioned. So she's basically saying we just wanted to figure out where they are going to be so that when we can ambush them, we're there first. We're lined up there first. Everything back when I was in TV news on a story of this kind of significance was about getting one step ahead of the competition. So it may not mean that you were going to do anything with it now, but you were going to know more details about whoever it was you're trying to interview than the other person. So you could get 5 seconds ahead of them and you would get the interview first and it would get on TV first.
And my other question, I'm sure it's going to set the chat ablaze, so we may have to shut down the stream. Could you imagine, just for a second though, what would the backlash be, or what would the perception be if this was a conservative media outlet like Fox News or Newsmax or Breitbart? What if it was one of their producers following this jury bus? Oh my Lord, the mountains would crumble, the seas would roar. Jesus of Nazareth has returned. End times are upon us. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I would be interested. I think my guess is that a lot of the people who watch Fox News Channel would have wanted Rittenhouse to have been found not guilty. So I think there would have been some cognitive dissonance there, because it's like, wait, our news, this is my news outlet, and now they're, screwing with the jurors. So it would hurt the narrative a little bit, I think, or at least there would be some cognitive dissonance there. You mean as far as like the media coverage of it?
Yes. Because
everybody would want to bust Fox. Like, can you believe they're doing that? Oh my God. After all the sort of like rooting for Kyle, they're screwing with the juror. I could totally see the coverage going that direction.
What do you think, Joanna?
Yeah, no, I agree with Allison. I think that, other media outlets would probably have picked that up. Is that kind of what you're asking? Like other media outlets?
Yeah, we want to replay this video.
Other media in outing a conservative media outlet for that behavior. Yeah, I totally agree.
That's the thing. This story as it sits right now has almost zero news coverage. If this would have been a conservative or right-leaning outlet, this would be the lead story every day, all day. They would be calling for a mistrial and for Kyle Rittenhouse to be tried again.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, but to your point, Bill, I agree. I mean, the New York Post covered it, and they played the video, but I don't know. I could do a quick search and see if there's anybody else, but I that was the main one I saw.
Now, to their credit, the local TV stations, actually all of them covered it, but I don't remember seeing anything in the New York Times. I don't remember seeing anything really on CNN. It just blows my mind how, if the roles were reversed here.
If the roles were reversed, say that again.
It just blows my mind how it would be perceived if the roles were reversed, if it was a conservative leaning outlet that got busted doing this.
Yeah. I agree. Here's an interesting question. What about Project Veritas and that style of journalism? You know what? We're not even going to get into that because Bill and I argue about what journalism is and Project Veritas constantly, and I want to go eat dinner. So final thought, everybody.
Okay, real quick, I will say this. I think I've come to terms with something, Allison. I think we need to start using the definitions a little bit differently. And I'm not talking about pronouns he, him, she, her. I'm talking about journalists versus citizen journalists. I think we can find some middle ground there on that. But as far as this in particular, it just one more step to prove that journalism's dead. And there's no, sure, we've said it on this channel many times. There's some people out there doing good journalistic work, but it's so few and far between. And it seems more and more like the public doesn't even care. So if you're thinking about journalism as a career, or if you're thinking about getting out of journalism, God be with you.
Fox isn't really conservative, more controlled opposition, except for Tucker. Carry on, Allison. I do agree that Fox just allows the safe sort of right-leaning talking points, but it won't it has its own kennel for, you know what I mean? Like it keeps the viewer, I think, in its own intellectual cage, and it makes you think that you're questioning mainstream narratives, but they only allow you to go so far. So I do agree that I don't necessarily think that they represent like the sort of outside I don't know what you would call it, non sort of mainline conservative. Like I could see them being more like the Mitch McConnell conservative in a lot of their talking points. Not necessarily those people who you would call sort of more like the populist right. Though I think he's right that Tucker does sort of present that perspective sometimes. I don't know.
Well, let's be honest. You can call Fox News whatever you want to, but the general perception of them to the American public is that they are a conservative, right-leaning media outlet. And whether they are or not, I guess that's a matter of opinion. But as far as the general public goes, I think that's the way they are perceived.
Okay, I am going to wrap this up. Do you all have any other horror stories that you would like to share before we go when it comes to stalking people and or anything else, really?
I think, when I was watching that video, it was hard for me to watch because I actually found myself feeling sorry for the guy driving, right? Because I felt like I'd been that guy so many times throughout my career because I've never been a news manager. I've only ever been a reporter. And so I felt for him. I mean, maybe he loved what he was doing and he totally believed in it. And he thought it was fine. But if he felt anything like I did, he probably felt pretty terrible. So I don't know. It was hard for me to watch from that perspective. I never lost like my heart when I was reporting. And that stuff was really hard for me to stomach. And it was the stuff that kept me awake at night, worrying, am I hurting somebody? It goes beyond offending somebody. Like, am I messing with this person's life because I'm trying to do this job somebody else told me to go out and do? And that's some scary stuff.
Did Allison freeze?
I think she did. I thought she was just complaining.
Her producer gave her a hard rap.